Good? Okay, so we're here in Bloomsbury in London for the Extractables and Leachables conference. You've been in this field for quite a few years. Could you give me a bit of background of E&L for you?
Well, it started a great deal of time ago, actually. I mean, I've been involved since the mid-90s, which is about the start of when this really started to be important to the regulators.
Right.
And that's really what's always driven this, is where the regulators have gone. It started with meter dose inhalers, and they were quite concerning because they actually had elements within them that could have been considered to be carcinogenic.
Right.
So that's always been the issue here: patient safety.
Right.
And originally, these materials that were around in the early 90s were just industrial chemicals that people have bought in and used. But since then, a great deal of effort has been put into designing suitable materials that are pharmaceutical materials rather than sort of just general, use materials.
Absolutely.
So over that time, I've been involved with looking at methods of analysis for these materials. It's a puzzle in analytical science. You've got to be able to detect things at a very low level, but also set out a situation where you're using the right tools for the job. Because one tool is not going to be enough to do this. You've really got to have an awareness of why the things might be there. And then design the tools appropriate to that. So sample preparation is very important, as well as the actual analysis.
Absolutely.
So then you've got the whole point around targeted analysis versus non-targeted analysis. Right. It's very easy to analyse things if you know what to expect. But one of the particular nuances of extractable and leachable analysis is very often you don't know what's going to be there. Right. So you need to have a detector system that is capable of non-targeted analysis.
And what sort of tools would fall into that category from your experience?
Well, the workhorse over the years has really been GCMs. GCMs has that unique ability to have EI spectra. Those EI spectra are library searchable.
Instruments are evolving all the time, and we've moved into an era where high resolution accurate mass is an option now with GC. Do you see that as being an advantage for extractables, leachables because of it's an increase in confidence of identification?
Yeah, sure. I think the accurate mass instruments have become more robust and more reliable. And also, I think the key piece is around what you do with the data once you've generated it. Right. I think it's very important that you have this information and then use it in the ways of compiling databases, etc. And accurate mass and other forms of analysis give you so much information. You're talking about gigabytes of data being generated, and that's a challenge in and of itself. But it just gives you different options. It gives you different ways of doing it. 10, 20 years ago, you had a unit mass resolution, and that was about it, really. So having more opportunity to generate higher resolution pieces that you can then delve into over time. You can go back into that data years later and pull it out, and that can be very important.
So, I mean, as you said before, you've been in the field since the beginning, really, and it's a relatively young field. What do you see as the sort of major challenges, looking to the next few years?
We touched on already the idea that data is really important, and I think that's standardization of that data is increasingly useful. If we can agree standard approaches, I think and work collaboratively. I think one of the issues has been for various reasons the data sometimes seem to be proprietary, whereas I think it'd be much more useful if we were sharing in a non-competitive space.
And I think that's starting to happen with certain sort of cloud sources of mass spectrum, for example. So do you see that as a trend moving forward? Because I guess it makes everyone's life a little bit easier, right, if we're sharing information and
I hope so. I mean, I think it will take a little bit of time and effort, as these things do, and I think it's important also that we link it to the regulatory environment.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. That was fantastic.